and also to formally start the session. Thank you so much. I would also request Saqib Abbas, who is presenting his paper offline, to come over to the time.
Very online voice. Doctor to the audience.
Ashiq-ul-Islam.
Ashiq-ul-Islam, sir.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Am I audible, sir? Am I audible, sir?
Yes. You're audible.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson, Professor Gulshan Majeed, sahab, former Director of the Center of Central Asian Studies, most respected Professor G.N. Khaki, Director, Center for Shaikh-ul Aalam Studies. I am, sir, highly thankful to Professor Khaki, who have been always so nice and kind. And thank you, sir, for giving me an opportunity to present my paper. And my paper is that is contribution of Sufis in promoting peace and coexistence in medieval Central Asia and across. So I will not go into the details because this is a very lengthy paper. So there's many, there were many Sufi orders. We find so many presence in the region. For example, we find that Uraviya, Yasaviya, Naqshbandiya originated in Central Asia. Am I audible to all?
Oh, yes.
Thank you, sir. So, medieval Central Asia is considered, we can say, to be the hub of academic excellence in the historical records. Sufism played a very significant role in the history of Central Asia. Different Sufi orders not only fought with the self-interest, but also provide a platform for peace and coexistence, and also took active part in the promotion of harmony and love. So according to Messel, he says that Sufi orders had been the only effective Muslim response to the Mongols, particularly in the 12th and 13th centuries. So also Benningson, in his book Islamic Threat to Soviet Asia, he says that the activities of the Tariqa were generally centered on like tombs of Muslim saints. So these places, we can say, acted as a forum which the Sufis use it basically for the promotion and of peace and communal harmony. So Sufism in Central Asia not only take into cognizance that the fundamentals of Islamic law, but respect their native traditions, customs, and assured people that Islam's liberalism would encompass their individualism as well. So we find that there are many Sufis there. For example, we have the pragmatic and humanitarian elements of Sufism can be found in the teachings of Abdul Qadir Jilani, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani. He says that in his teachings that never swear by God, never speak an untruth even in jest, never break a promise, never curse anyone, never harm anyone, never accuse anyone of religious infidelity, never become a part to anything sinful, never impose a burden on others, never accept anything from human beings. God alone is the giver. So look for in others the good points, not the bad. So these conceptions, of course, link back to the central idea in Sufism, that of love, Muhabba, in which the trinity of lover, loved, and love are based ultimately, we can say, on a compassionate and merciful Allah. So the Sufis were closer to the general masses than the rulers at that time. In fact, rulers were often tempted to be seen in their company to acquire some legitimacy. So the noted theologian, we can say the Sufi Imam Ghazali, says that one should not look at the face of tyrants and unjust sultan. Even if it becomes necessary, one should turn one's face away while talking to such rulers. Ghazali also defined tasawwuf in a broader way sense. He says, "Atazimul amrullah wa shafqa ala khalqillah," reverence to the commandments of God and kindness towards His creatures. Sayyid Ali Hamadani, although he considered himself to be the chosen of God, he also advocates the principle of universal justice, both in his letters and his book Zakhiratul Mughluq. He repeatedly underlines the fact that one of the important obligation of ruler is that to provide protection to his subjects through strict administration of justice. Those who follow the cardinal principles of justice and public welfare, he says, shall attain salvation, and those who go astray shall face wrack and ruin. So, thus it is obvious, we can say, how Sufis maintained their distance from the power center. And it was for this reason that they were so dear to the common people at that time. Though there was always exception to any rule, most of the Sufis maintained this distance. They did not want religion to be misused by rulers. Religion for these Sufis was not only a means for acquiring power and influence, rather it was means for these spiritual deeds. So we have one of the great Sufi Sheikh mentioned early part of the study is Khwaja Ahrar. He was noteworthy in establishing peace and harmony, or we can say the coexistence in Central Asian Sufi history. Khwaja Ahrar regularly helped broker peace between rival Timorid princes. One of his letters addressed to Sultan Hussain Bakyara states his opinions on a land distribution plan made to appease belligerent princes. The Khwaja approved this theme, giving the highest priority in peace to peace in a kingdom. So he writes, what good will come from two Muslim factions who are related to one another being at war? The Khwaja was known as a political mediator, and this can be judged from biographical accounts of his life, an account that is present in both in Silsilatul Arifin attests to this popular image. So the Khwaja was accompanying the forces of Sultan Ahmad Mirza as the later rode against the combined forces of Sheikh Mirza and Sultan Mahmud Mirza. Once camped, Khwaja asked the Sultan Mirza, "Why did you bring me alone? I am not a man of war. And if you desire peace, what then is the delay?" So the Mirza replied, "What authority do I have? All affairs are, we can say, subject to your will." So the Khwaja arranged for the three parties to meet each other. The Khwaja is reported to have said, "I have become weak from old age. I bear the burden of these negotiations so that you don't entangle yourself." Means that you are not entangled in your forming as well. So in the end, all three parties made peace with each other. Referring to this event, Mirza Haidar Dughlaq remarks, "No one could resist the entreaties of the blessed mind of the holiness." So this account shows us that not only was the Khwaja close the Timorid princes, but that he also bore the responsibility of having the three Timorid family members making peace with each other, we can say. So this demonstrates, we can say, the importance of peace and stability in the eyes of Khwaja, and how he reminded the Timurids that they should maintain cohesion among themselves. So there are so many examples where we find that peace and coexistence in Central Asian. So what they have preached, they have given so much importance to the peace and coexistence, love and compassionate nature was there. So we can find that in Central Asia, Sufism represents the cosmopolitan, intellectual, and spiritual aspects of Islam, which are capable of willing to engage in discourse with other cultures and religions. So Sufi history in Central Asia bears out this point. Upon entering the region, it faced a variety of religions and religious traditions ranging from Zoroastrianism to Semitic animism. So there were organized networks of Sufi brotherhood that have been popular in Central Asia since medieval times, continue to exercise considerable influence on the Muslims. So in spite of all the Russian atrocities, Central Asia is perhaps the only region, we can say, where we find the most Muslim majority population who did not advocate armed
मुझे पांच पता है इन बहुत से
Shaikh साहब, हेलो हेलो, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही। आशिक हुसैन मीर, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है।
most of Central Asia.
Aşık sabah çayın ağzına şimdi yiyor.
Hello. Ashiq, we are not able to hear you. Can you hear us? Sir, he's rejoining. Kindly proceed, Ashiq Saab. I think you have muted your.
Okay. This will be the last point. Give me only 2-3 seconds, sir. Am I audible, sir? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Sir, the last 3 points. Give me only 1-2-3 minutes. But last 2 3 points. Sir, we can say that in spite of all the Russian atrocities, we can say Central Asia is perhaps the only religion, we can say, where we find the Muslim majority population who did not advocate armed revolution against the Russian atrocities inflicted upon Muslim population of the region. There would be possibly many reasons for this. We can say the compassionate behavior of the Central Asian people, but the influence of Sufi traditions had molded the mindset of Muslim population for centuries together is one of the significant reasons to advocate harmonious life. So, das Baha Khar, Dil Baha Yar, we not find this was not the guiding force for the emergence of Sufi orders of Central Asia, but it stemmed down to the general masses of the region as well. Consequently, of Central Asia in general, we can say. So they demonstrated compassionate attitude towards the sufferings of the.
Dr. Mohammad to please present this.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Respected persons and friends, I am writing a paper about Noor Baksha, something about origin and a bit about how it's separate to Kashmir, different parts of Central Asia and Kashmir. I will skip the introduction. Firstly, the founder of Noor Baksha. This Noor Baksha was basically, it was sub-order of Hamdaniya. Hamdaniya, Korea order, after that, basically Hamdani's Hamdani order, and from that emerged this Noor Baksha order. So I'm talking about Sayyid Nur Bakhsh. The real name of Sayyid Nur Bakhsh was Mohammad bin Abdullah. His father was born Qaim and his grandfather Al Hassan, while in some ghazals he styles himself as Lasari. And so of his family is traced back to Imam Jafar, the sixth Imam of the Shia school of thought. Among his loved ones, he was known as Mir. His father's name was Muhammad and grandfather's name was Abdullah. So his complete name became the Sayyid Mir Sayyid Muhammad Nur Bakhsh Ibn Abdullah Lasri. The Nur Bakhsh order grew and spread far away during the period of its founder and also through his direct and indirect ambassadors. Nur Bakhsh order is in accordance with the Hamdaniya Kabrawi order of the Sufism. And takes up Hamdani and Nur Bakhsh are more or less same. Mir Sayyid Hamdani. Mir Sayyid got his early education in the village. He learned the Holy Quran by heart at the age of 7, and in a short time he received the Islamic disciplines of knowledge from Sheikh of Muhammad bin Fahd Ali. After getting the spiritual side of knowledge, he successfully traveled through the realm of reality and standing up and stood in the line of acknowledged saints. The spiritual genealogy table of Mir Sahib goes like this: Sayyid Muhammad Nur, Sayyid Muhammad Nur, Bakhsh, Khwaja Isa Khatwani alayhi rahmah, Amir Kabir Sayyid Hamdani alayhi rahmah, Sheikh Najibuddin Kubrawi, Sheikh Amar Yasir, Sheikh Abu Najib Sarwardi. It corresponds to the Hamdani Tariqat. The method and silsila both are same. These are believed to be two faces of same coin. The Nur Bakhsh faith, Islam and Imam among Nur Bakhsh stress the ibadah and taqwa and cleanliness. As per the fundamentals of faith, namaz is the important pillar and is performed in congregation. Fast during Ramadan is along with i'tikaf. Hajj is obligatory like other schools of thought of Islam, and circumambulation is considered more important. The nafil namaz are given more importance. As per Nur Bakhsh, Tafsir Ahbab, Hazrat al-Islam is referred to as Mawlai Muttaqiyan, Walillah, Amir al-Mu'min, Imam al-Muttaqin. His caliphate and imamat is considered the foremost. They believe in truthfulness and love for the household of the Prophet. The disbelief in the love of the Ahl Bayt of Muhammad is considered as kufr and death. According to Nur Bakhsh tradition, Nur Bakhsh is silsila Tasawwuf, whose foundation was laid by Sayyid Muhammad Nur Bakhsh. He, in order to dilute the difference between different schools of Islam, laid the foundation of a permanent jurisprudence school and claimed that in order to eliminate the difference and substitute rules of Islam, intended to keep it at same level as it was during the life of the Prophet of Islam. Thus they considered him as a Sufi and a jurisprudent, and hence Nur Bakhsh sect is both a religious group and a Sufi cult. The sect has been named as Sufia Nur Bakhsh. The schools of belief among Nur Bakhsh. According to faith, they believe in 5 principles: faith in Allah and in the angels of Allah, faith in the books sent by Allah, faith in Prophet of Allah, and finally, faith in the day of resurrection. The 5 things which are practicable: say La ilaha illallah, 5 times namaz, pay zakat, fast during Ramadan, if finance is sound, go to Hajj. 5 things which they claim are already known. These are thanksgiving when in sound condition, patience during difficulties, be ready for Allah's, stand strong during trials and not to submit to trials. The belief of a believer must be affirmation by tongue, authentication by heart, physical practice, following the traditions of Prophet. The Trinity of belief, Sharia, methodology, Hakikat, Tariqat. As per Nur Bakhsh, the one who follows or doesn't follow the above mentioned 4 principles of belief has following results. The one who follows all the 4 principles of belief is a true Muslim. The one who denies all the 4 is totally a non-believer. The one who affirms by tongue and but not authenticates by heart is hypocrite. One who accepts by tongue authentication by heart but not practice is a fasting. One who accepts by tongue authentication by heart and practice physically but does not follow the sunnah of the Prophet is called biddati. For Nur Bakhsh, the fundamental principles are: Nur Bakhsh shaping down. The Nur Baksha history brief. Sayyidina Nur Baksh joined Kubrawi order through Ibrahim Khatlani, who was vice sergeant of Khaja Isa Khatlani. Khaja Isa Khatlani was the famous. He, after joining the group of Isa Khatlani, probably in Julhajjah 819, at the age of 24, it is said that upon a natural event, Khaja gave him title of Nur Baksh. Later he began to be referred with the said title. It is also said that in 836 his companion named Khalid dreamed a light coming from the heaven and falling upon Sayyid Muhammad and then upon the earth. When Khaja Isa heard it, he entitled Sayyid Muhammad as Nur Baksh. The Khaja Isa Khatlani bestowed the dress Khirka of Sayyid Ali Hamadani to him and gave him the responsibility of teaching and training of dervishes. The Sufi order, Tariqat Nur Baksh, has following spiritual genealogy, starting from the Pakistan, which is used for Aristotle. The Nur Baksh geography. The Nur Baksh interstate spread from Iraq to Central Asia. Misri Hamdani is buried at Kolabstein, Khatlan. Khaja Isa Khatlani belonged to Khatlan, and in his Khanqa, Misri Muhammad Nur Baksh was initiated as a Maoist disciple of Isa Khatlani. In that area, Badakhsha, Tarant, Kais, Kundur, and Balakh were the Nur Bakhs were found. The different regions of Khurasan, Nishapur, Kazmi, Herat, Ray, and Gilan were important. Where Nur Baksh movement was centered. Also, this movement influenced other areas as well as Nuristan, Shostwar, Aristan, Kurdistan, Azerbaijan, and Tabriz, and areas around them, and also through their disciples, spread to Turkey, Egypt, Yemen, India, and Kashmir. Descendants of the Sayyid Muhammad Nur Baksh were from his family as well as the other ones. Sayyid Qasim Faiz Baksh was one of his sons and his disciple. He was in Solgan Khanqa after the death of his father. Other disciples were Sayyid Muhammad bin Ali Tokani, Muhammad bin Saad al-Hamadani, and Shamsuddin Lej. Faiz Baksh started the instruction work task in 859 Hijra. He has got the Majas Momdi and Nafasul Mansur during Safi dynasty had access to Sultan Yaqub's court. As was shows that in Sultan Hussein's court, he had great mission and so many force development, and he had to leave the Iraq. As per Tafla Mir Iraqi, during his child used at Miss Iraqi. As per Tafla, during his child, he used to accompany his father to Miss Sayyid Muhammad Nur Baksh. His father gave responsibility of looking after the family, but Mir wanted him to be in the company of Nur Baksh. Finally, he became the disciple of Mir Shams Iraqi became the disciple of Sayyid Muhammad Nur Baksh. Now we talk about Mir Shams Iraqi. Mir Shams Iraqi, his teachers were Sheikh Muhammad Bahari, 2 years, Mullah Hassan Kokabi, 2 years, Sheikh Muhammad Safli, 10 years, Mullah Burhan Baqadi, Sheikh Muhammad bin Ali Labati, 6 years, Sayyid Qasim Faiz Baksh, son of the Sayyid Muhammad Nur Baksh. It was his teacher. Then he became permanent disciple of Sayyid Qasim Faiz Baksh. He was titled Shamsuddin by his teacher, Sayyid Qasim Faiz Baksh. Mir Shamsuddin Iraqi was born in 888 Hijra. Mir Shamsuddin Iraqi paid first visit to Kashmir. He remained here for 8 years and left the place in 896. Then in 809, he came back and he constructed Khanqa here. Khanqa is edible. In 901, Mir Iraqi was forced to leave Kashmir and went to Pakistan. It is said that he broke a big idol in the palace of King of Skardu, Makbul Bukha, who had converted to Islam and named as Sher Khan, but still continued to worship the idols of his palace. Thus the king named him as this Mir Shams Iraqi, and there he broke the idol, and that king gave him the title of Butchikar to Mir Shams Iraqi. So Mir Shams Iraqi was called Butchikar. He returned, it is also referred by this Malik Haidar Charter, he also refers to the class. He returned to Kashmir after demise of Delhi. When Malik Musa and occupied the Govt of Kashmir in Kashmir, he was highly welcomed back. In Kashmir, he built several khankas and he just reconstructed the khanka this Hamdaniya, so they are Fatikal. Then there was Khanka Mala Samudari Mar near Bakadal. Then there was Khanka Nagar, Bulbul. He also occupied that Khanka. That was under Nur Bakhsh at that time. Now, the works this Seminar-cum did, his main work here was conversion of non-Muslims or those people who were partially converted to Islam. So one of the important techniques that he used he destroyed the culture of the infidels. The idol worship was common among these people, and along with the infidel tradition, there were acts of illicit nature, such as gambling, drunkenness, fornication, etc. These were the evils which had destroyed the society, and early ethical set was against. Thus, in order to eliminate the society from these evils, there he took an active role. The different temples, named in Takhlaba, which were presently in Kashmir and were destroyed by Mirsan Rakiba, Purbushar, Jalamukha, Handarenu, Bakhirenu, Loturenu. These were some places. Basically, he did one thing. The places where Muslim majority lived, and there were some idol worshiping places. He destroyed those. He did not touch those where those non-Muslims lived. So finally, my point is that Nur Bakhsh art is basically a Sufi art. It is not different from what Syed Hamdani taught. So it was the same silsila. It was basically we have seen that people construct them different from what Mr. Hamdani said. No, it was a continuation of the Mr. Hamdani's thought. So it's spread here. So finally, what happened later in Kashmir, it was up to long period the faith was dominating. Here later some scholars from Iran and other places came and they converted them fully. 12 dwellers, they were dwellers. The difference is that they follow the Mujtahid Mir Sayyid Muhammad Nur Bakhsh. So in Shia faith, dwellers faith, they follow Mujtahid of their own era. So this is main difference. But we have seen in Kargil, there are some Nur Bakhsh, Prophet Sahib, but they are also changing now because of influence of the present present scholars from different. Even if in India we have one, this Nur Bakshas have one school in this Altaf area, but it is teachers there are from Iran. So it means gradually that faith will not come. Basically, when I visited Ladakh, I have visited those many people of the Nur Baksh. They are by name Nur Baksh. They don't follow those practices which Nur Baksh people did. So it's by name. Maybe it is lost of this. We some Iraqi came there. We some Iraqi. Some Iraqi. He was sent by his teacher, Syed Fazla. Firstly, for the kingdom of the king here, that time he was working in he was noble of the Wali Khurasan. This is Iraqi. Then after 8 years, he
After I very Dr. Syed Abbas, was edited of idea. This paper is on activist citizens.
Yeah. Activist Sufism in Persianite cosmopolitan. Some anthropological observations on the Nur Bakshi in Iran and Kashmir.
Sorry, sorry. So this paper is in continuation.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, the points to tell it is थोड़ा डाउन because we don't know the list.
I'm Saqib Abbas. I'm doing my PhD from Tehran. Actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Que when was it?
You have done masters from which institution
From-
or subject?
I've done my master's and my bachelor's from Delhi University.
Okay. All right.
Anthropology. So, with the permission of the chair, I would like to start my paper. It's titled Activistic Sufism in Persianate Cosmopolis, Some Anthropological Observations on the Nurbakshiya in Iran and Kashmir. This paper discusses the trajectory of activistic Sufism. I had this idea because Sufism generally, like we saw, is connected with docility, political docileness. But I wanted to show that there were Sufi trends which were politically active, and they were, at the forefront of political changes. So this paper discusses the trajectory of activistic Sufism of the Nurbakshiya Sufis, centered on Sayyid Muhammad Nurbakhsh in Timurid Iran and its influence in subsequent generations in the center of Persianate cosmopolis and in Kashmir. It first elaborates upon the emergence of Nurbakshiya Kubrawiya Sufi order and the scholarly and activistic personality of Sayyid Muhammad Nurbakhsh and his immediate disciples who spread Nurbakshiya Sufism in Central Asia and in Gilgit-Baltistan and Kashmir. It elaborates upon the direct influence of Ibn Arabi on the activistic nature of Sayyid Nurbakhsh's social program and compares it with the revolutionary idea of Sayyid Ruhollah Khomeini, who, although epistemologically influenced by Ibn Arabi, took his political inspiration from the likes of preeminent Egyptian ideologue Sayyid Qutb. Finally, anthropological observations are made on the eventual fate of activistic Sufism in Iran, where the militant Sufi order of the Safavids acquired political power, through which the clergy acquired unmatched moral and political authority, which finally culminated in the Islamic Revolution, and Kashmir, where activistic Sufis of Nurbakshiya background receded into background. Activistic Sufis of Nurbakshiya receded into background after the dissolution of Czech dynasty, and the political poetism of the school took hold among them as a marginalized and insecure sect, informed by the Tusian paradigm among the Qadimis, and by the Ansarian paradigm among the Jadidis. So, firstly, I've tried to locate the ground, the region of Central Asia and Kashmir in a kind of a cosmopolis where we can compare things. So, I've taken this idea from Eaton, who, following Pollock's momentous work on the Sanskrit cosmopolis, has coined the term of Persian cosmopolis to ground the continuity emergent from this common paradigm and demonstrating the richness and diversity of the Persianate world, which at any given time transcended traditional boundaries of the Persian homeland. In due time, the Persian cosmopolis left lasting imprints on local cultures across South Asia and Central Asia, and to some extent on West Asia as well. Not only did it witness the foundation of powerful empires with distinct fortly cultures, of what have been termed as the Islamic gunpowder empires, the Ottomans, the Safavids, and the Mughals, but it also produced important intellectual, devotional, and literary networks which heralded civilizational outcomes par excellence. So I'll just quickly, because Sir had just given an introduction about the Nurbakshi, so I'll focus on the main points of the activistic nature of Sayyid Muhammad Nurbakhsh's this paradigm. Yeah. So, as Sir had pointed out, that essentially Nurbakshis were a continuity of the Kubrawi Sufi orders. So there were some ideas within the Kubrawi stream which flew into the works of, say, percolated into the work of Sayyid Muhammad Nurbaksh. So, for instance, there are the works of Mirza Ali Hamadani and Alauddin Simnani, which Sayyid Muhammad Nur Bakhsh is highlighting in his works. But there were others, lesser known Kubrawis, whose works influenced Sayyid Muhammad Nur Bakhsh. For instance, there was Najmuddin Razi, a Hanafi in fiqh from the Kubrawi Sufi order, who wrote a very important work called Misalul Ibad min al-Mabda ila al-Ma'ad, and which was one of the most popular Kubrawi texts and translated into Chinese and Turkish in the 13th century itself. Similarly, Sayyid Muhammad Nur Bakhsh had access to the works of Kubrawis like Sa'aduddin Hamuya, who was a very important Kubrawi precept, but who had a kind of a proto-Islamic, who wrote a few books on the subject on Vilayat, which is and propounded on the theory of Mahdavism, as also that of Azizuddin Nasafi, who wrote the masterful texts of Kashful Haqaiq and Kitab Insani Kamil, in which the transformative nature of Madhavism is discussed in detail. Sa'aduddin Hamuya was an especially successful disciple of Najmuddin Kubra from the Kubrawi Sufi order, having traveled for studies to Makkah, Damascus, and other cities. In Damascus, he is said to have met Ibn Arabi himself, for whom he conceived a profound respect, describing him as a boundless ocean. Ibn Arabi is said to have reciprocated by calling him an inexhaustible treasure. Sa'aduddin was additionally in prolonged contact with Ibn Arabi's principal disciple, Sadruddin Qunawi. Hamuya had distinct views on the relationship, and this is the focal thing here, between the relationship between Nubuwwat and Wilayat, which were later on to find expression in Sayyid Nur Bakhsh's mission. Each prophet, he declared, has also the quality of a wali, for he is oriented simultaneously to God and to man. He is wali by virtue of the former orientation and nabi by virtue of the leader. Insofar as an orientation to God is self-evidently superior to one to man, the wilayat of the prophet is superior to his nubuwwat. He opined that their wilayat begins with the ending of prophethood, in the sense that their task of revealing inner truths could begin only when prophethood had been sealed with the last of prophets, Prophet Muhammad. For Hamuya, it was the 12 Imams from the family of the Prophet that might rightfully be designated walis after him. The 12th among them, the expected Mahdi, counted therefore as the Khatmul Awliya, or the seal of the saints, and his return to the manifest plane was about to take place. Later Kubrawis like Abul Ma'ali Saifuddin Bakarzi were mindful of pure political expediency because the Mongols had conquered Muslim lands. So Bakarzi hoped that links with the Mongols would favorably dispose them to Islam. This can be deduced from a versified letter he wrote to Qutbuddin Amidul Mulk Abbas, who was a vizier to Chagtai Khan. One line of which reads, "You are entrusted in this government with promoting the truth, Nusrat-e-Haq. Should you fail to do so, what will be your excuse on the day of gathering?" When Bakarzi was visited in Bukhara by Berke, the future ruler of the Golden Horde, he succeeded in fact in either converting him to Islam or strengthening him in the affirmation of the faith. Nuruddin Abdurrahman Isfarani wrote to both Ghazan Khan and Al-Jaitu Khan, great grandsons of Alahu Khan, both of whom were raised as Christians, instructing them on the true nature of kingship. If the Gnostic was the pole of the realm of spiritual being or Malakut, he took the former. The Sultan was the pole of the realm of material being or Mulk. The temporary disjunction between religion and kingship that was followed on the Mughal invasion was, he said, the result of the death of Majduddin Baghdadi at the hands of Khwarazm Shah. Thereby, he suggested that the well-being of worldly authorities was dependent on the favors of sheikhs such as him. In essence, Isfarani, who was a Kubrawi, his activities in Baghdad were akin to those other Kubrawis, notably Saifuddin Bakarzi and Sadruddin Hamuya, who were attempting to bring the Mongols into the fold of Islam. Alauddin Simnani, who was a disciple of Isfarani, continued the outreach of his predecessors towards the now freshly converted Mongols. In addition, he made a special arrangement for the spiritual upbringing of Mir Said-Ali Hamadani, who strengthened the foundations of Kubrawiyya with his excellent scholarly, charismatic, and devotional qualities, upon which Sayyid Nur Bakhsh was to form his edifice. Hamdani's metaphysical speculation, I will just skip through this because I think it must be well known here. Marked by the duality of aspects and integrated system, about the Wajib al-Wujud and Zat al-Mutaliya, in passing from the words of ideas or ma'ani through spirits and archetypes or misal to the physical world, indeterminate beings receives its manifold forms and is made articulate in concrete existence. The microcosm of man, reflecting the macrocosm of the universe, in Sayyid Ali Hamadani, is composed of subtle luminous substance, Jawhar-e-Latif Nurani, and coarse tenebrous substance, Jawhar-e-Kasif Zulmani. Man is endowed with the inner scale of organs of consciousness, nafs, qalb, sir, ruh, leading to the innermost core or the khafi or akhfa, where the attributes of the divine presence are made manifest through the experience of ecstasy. So all these ideas percolated into the works of Sayyid Muhammad Nur Bakhsh, but the most important influence in Sayyid Muhammad Nur Bakhsh's writings or his thoughts was Ibn Arabi. Ibn Arabi and the preparation of a revolutionary vision in Sayyid Muhammad Nur Bakhsh. As we have noted above, Ibn Arabi's thoughts had permeated into the Kubrawi teachings for some time, albeit not without contestations, because there were some Kubrawis who did not accept Ibn Arabi, but most of them did. We must also highlight that in the context immediately preceding the establishment of the Safavids as a revolutionary Sufi order, Ibn Arabi and the Ishraqi school of Suhrawardi had already begun to form the backbone of Sufi thought. More broadly, the whole intellectual discourse of Sufis generally had begun to revolve around Ibn Arabi, either in defense or attack. His influence could be found on a multitude of Sufi orders like the Suhrawardiya, Chishtiya, Naqshbandiya, Zahabiya, Ni'matullahiyya, apart from the Kubrawiya. Among the Kubrawiya, Azizuddin Nasafi and Abul Mafakhir Bakharzi were the preeminent Sufis to be influenced by Ibn Arabi. But Alauddin Simnani's contestation with Sheikh Abdul Razak Kashani was a setback for Ibn Arabi. But Sayyid Haidar Amuli, Ibn Turk Isfahani, Ibn Abi Jamhur Ahsai were some preeminent commentators of Ibn Arabi, whose embellishments helped popularize Ibn Arabi among the learned and the novices of Sufism across the Persian cosmopolis. Among the writings of Ibn Arabi, Fususul Hikam was especially popular among the proto-Imamis. Some of the core concepts of Ibn Arabi which permeated into Sayyid Muhammad Nur Bakhsh's thought were Wahdatul Wujud, Insani-Kamil, Khatmul-Wilaya, Faiz-e-Aqdas wa Muqaddas, Wahdat-e-Jawhar-e-Adyan, Afrinish wa Jahan Shinasi, Bisal-u-Zaman-e-Ramzi, wa Ta'wil. In Majalisul Mu'mineen, Qazi Sayyid Nurullah Shustari, one of the stellar students of Sayyid Muhammad Nur Bakhsh, who was the Mughal Qazi of Kashmir for some time, has elaborated upon the devoted study of Sayyid Nur Bakhsh of Ibn Arabi's texts, especially Fususul Hikam. He himself writes, Ibn Arabi Rais-e-Umal, Fihrist Haqaiq Hast Mujmal. Three concepts that especially helped formulate Sayyid Nur Bakhsh's philosophical anthropology and subsequent identity of the moral self and its potentiality of being and becoming are Wahdat-e-Wujud, Insani-Kamil and Khatmul-Wilaya. These prepared the ground for Sayyid Nur Bakhsh's activistic Sufism. I'll just mention these in a brief. Wahdatul Wujud. The concept of Wahdatul Wujud forms the crucible of Ibn Arabi's sacred ontology. In Sayyid Muhammad Nur Bakhsh, the ocean of existence is an indivisible reality of which each existence is a consistent part. Comprehending creation, therefore, as an act of Creator's munificence is the foremost insight of a Sufi. He writes, Agar hadiyam ba agar mahdiyam ba jambe kadam tiflaki mahdiyam yaqi katraim az muhit wujud فرو مانده از کاهلی در قیود من از کترگی گشتم بس نفور خدایا رسانم به دریای نور. Moreover, the potentiality of a human being in this sacred design, in which that if he attains the attributes of perfection, he becomes the ultimate reason for the whole of creation. عارف ki mutasif bas sifat kamal shud haqa ke oost illat ghayat ghayi mumkinat. The concepts of unity and multiplicity, which form core domains of study in Islamic philosophy and theology, are given monistic treatment by Sayyid Nur Bakhsh to the extent that he calls multiplicity itself polytheism. That sheer truth is essentially simple and unified means that multiplicity has to be understood as an illusion and essentially something whose existence is illusory, temporary, and disappearing. He exhorts one to drown in the ocean of unity instantly, thereby attaining the meaning of unity in existence. Hast mutlaq haq mutlaq dan bast hasti mawhum ra ma'lum dan biguzar az kasrat ke kasrat mushriki ist garb shu dar bahri wahdat yek zaman. The second concept of Ibn Arabi that influenced Sayyid Muhammad Nur Bakhsh was Insani-Kamil, or perfect human being. As with the concept of Wahdat al-Wujud, Sayyid Muhammad Nurbakhsh offers his commentary in his Ghazaliyat for this Ibn Arabian concept. For instance, he writes, Dawaire aflaq bahukme hadith lawlaq tufeil wujud shadid alluding to the sea of lawlaq. Nurbakhsh proclaims that the existence of the universe owes its presence to the existence of Insani Kamil. In other words, had there been no Insani Kamil, there would have been no creation of the cosmic universe. This highlights the importance of the human self in all its dimensions. He considers Insani Kamil as true microcosm and complete existence. Also, crucially for Sayyid Nurbakhsh, an Insani Kamil is the expression of godly attributes and his holy names. Insani Kamil, therefore, is the cornerstone of a sacred anthropology in which the value and dignity of personhood is infinitely enhanced. It wouldn't be amiss for a Sufi to declare the importance of self in and for itself through the looking glass of Insani Kamil. If man is of such importance, then mankind deserves perfect social justice through a just order, and an unjust ruler deserves to be dislodged from authority in order to pave the way for the articulation and expression of the best possible attributes which the subjects of a dominion are capable of having, which through gradations are epistemically available in the form of ilmul yaqeen, ainul yaqeen, and haqqul yaqeen. In addition to this, to witness truth, he insists that first one should erase the imprint of others from one's soul. Here we find the primordial essence of Islamic philosophy in Sayyid Muhammad Nurbakhsh, which was to be highlighted years later by the likes of Allama Tabatabai, which is the intimate relation between subjectivity and epistemology in Islamic thought. Shustim naqsh ghair az alwah kainat, didin alami ki sifat ast ain zat. And fil jumle mazhar hame asmast zat man, kul ism azam bi haqiqat chu min garam. We can see from these verses that the method of subtraction or mihna of the imprints of details of existence from consciousness forms the pedestal of God consciousness or realization for Sayyid Muhammad Nurbakhsh, so that the Sufi can be capable of seeing everything through the perfection of this realization. In such a scheme of things, if history is an anomaly of perfection, one would need to work to redress the wrongs as a necessity. And the final concept which led Sayyid Muhammad Nurbakhsh to formulate his activistic Sufism was the concept of Khatmul Wilayah, which after the seal of prophethood or Khatmul Nubuwwah would pave way for the activity of saints or awliya from the Ummah. In the final analysis, there will also be a seal of sainthood, which would conform to the numerous prophetic traditions of the coming Mahdi, who would fill the world with justice and equanimity after it has been filled with tyranny and oppression. In Nurbakhsh Ghazaliyat, we find mention of this concept in this way. Pas bihar duri waliye qaimast, ta qayamat azmaish daimast. Sayyid Nurbakhsh thus considers a living wali as embodiment of God's sacred names, an existential necessity in anthropological and ontological order. In this interpretation of Khatmul Anbiya and Khatmul Awliya, there are elements of proto-Imamism in Nurbakhsh's messianic Mahdavism. Overall, we find the ripening of an intellectually prepared personality who would launch an unsuccessful revolt against the Timurids in Iran. In this way, Nurbakhshis would be paving way for another messianic Sufi order. Okay, sir, I'll just conclude. The Safavids, some of whom were already his disciples. So, let's talk about Nurbakhshis in Kashmir, so I'll just come to the conclusion. In stark contrast to the fate of activistic Sufism in Kashmir of Nurbakhshis, it had a totally different trajectory in the heartland of Persian cosmopolis. Safavid revolt succeeded in establishing and institutionalizing their social program with the help of a class of immigrant ulama who acquired unparalleled power, social prestige, and autonomy of practice. While the later Safavids soon fell to the modes of power politics and began suppressing various Sufi orders, including the Nurbakhshis, established Sufi orders like the Ni'matullahi and Haidari maintained an enriched and unchallenged social presence throughout the domain. The prestige of ulama allowed them to make crucial interventions at critical times, for instance in the face of European colonialism in Qajar times, or later during the Constitutional Revolution. The teachings of Ibn Arabi got institutionalized in the religious education system, although like Islamic philosophy represented by Ibn Sina, Sohrawardi, and the Isfahan school of Mullah Sadra, who was one of the philosophers, there was a degree of hesitation from the established elites of religious scholarship towards popularization of these doctrines. One of the few iconoclasts who openly revived these teachings before the revolution was Sayyidullah Khomeini, who had to face incessant opposition from within the faculty of the religious school for popularizing these studies. With the success of the Islamic revolution, both Islamic philosophy and
Very much.
I request. Gençler arasında arkadaşlar mümkün lazım.
Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes. Of course.
Yes, you're audible.
Worthy chairman of the session, learned audience. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dr. Lam, can I share my screen?
Sure.
Hello, is it visible, sir?
Not yet. Not yet.
Is my screen visible, sir, PowerPoint?
No, sir. Not yet.
Is it visible, sir?
No, sir. It is visible. All right,
Sir, shall I start, sir?
We can't read it.
Start your presentation.
Okay, sir. Worthy chairman of the session, respected audience, assalamu alaikum, good morning and adab. The theme of my paper is transcultural mysticism, the convergence of Sufism and Rishism. So I have divided my presentation into certain subtitles, which read as general remarks about the presentation, then a bit of introduction, then transcultural seekers of truth, something about their introduction, then a brief account of Mansur al-Hallaj's sojourn in Kashmir, the convergence of cultural traits of local and non-local origin, then the vocation of Sheikh Nuruddin, his description of Jalaluddin Rumi, his estimation of Mansur al-Hallaj, then how he hailed the local rishis and mystics of the bygone times. Then I have presented the conclusion of this presentation. Actually, when we look into Kalhana's Raj Tarangi, he uses that at a particular period of time, the usages or the traditions of Kashmir were being overturned or changed drastically. How it was possible in the 12th century, because it must not have been an anticipation or forecast by a learned historian like Kalhana, because he must have observed something. He must have observed the fast changing nature of the traditions and usages of Kashmir, in spite of the fact that there was a local philosophy of monism and their philosophers and aestheticians like Abhinava Gupta, Vasu Gupta, and others. So this fast transformation of the usage or traditions of Kashmir was possible only by dint of the collision and then by the synthesis of the local and non-local, mystic and cultural trends. So this synthesis was given by none other than the rishis who were, led at a particular time by the patron saint, that is Sheikh Nuruddin, because these rishis led by Sheikh Nuruddin were present in the valley in thousands, and they had a deep penetration in the nooks and corners of Kashmir. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Please go on.
Yeah. So when we look into mysticism, different societies have produced different mystics. No matter they have different societies have named by them by different names. For example, if we look into the mystic Semitic world, especially the children of Ibrahim, Ismail, that is the Arabs, we see there were different Hunafa. For example, in the beginning of the 7th century, there was a Hanif by the name of Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nafil, who was very critical of his compatriots. He was also a cousin of Umar, the second Caliph of Islam. He criticized the religious notions of his compatriots like this, and I quote, Allah has created the sheep and he has sent the water for it from the sky, and he has given the grass for it from the earth, yet you slaughter it in others' name than the name of Allah, unquote. And we see this 7th century utterance almost repeated by Laldet in 15th century, and she also, critiques her compatriots in these words, and she says, and I quote, "It covers your shame, saves you from cold, it's food and drink, mere water and grass. Who counseled, O you Brahman," that is her compatriots, "to slaughter a living sheep as a sacrifice unto a lifeless stone?" It does not mean that Laldet had heard something from the 7th century Hanif of the Arabs, but I want to emphasize here that the mystics or the seekers of truth have always reached to the man reason behind this existence, that is the reality, by using their mystic, we can say mystic sense, although senses are not allowed directly in mystic experiences. However, we see this utterance of 7th century Hanif of Arabs is repeated in 15th century by Laldet. Now, how this was possible? Because there had been different mystic and cultural contacts between the Muslim mainlands and Kashmir, because at a particular point of time towards the close of 9th century, we are told that Mansur al-Hallaj, the most prominent monist of Muslims or the Sufis, had visited Kashmir, and this was a time when there lived a monastics, Shaivite monastics like Somananda and Vasugupta. It seems that he must have shared something with these monastics. However, it does not mean they might have reached to some conclusion or agreement on the secrets of monism, because the agreement could have only on the idea, but not with regard to the ways of life, with regard to customs and with regard to traditions. But it only signifies that there had been a mystic contact before the 14th century as well. Now, we are again told by Kalhana that King Harsha, he was very critical of King Harsha because of his sacrilegious attitude, according to Kalhana, or his profane attitude, because he had given a license to Turushkas, according to Kalhana, the impure outsiders, and provided them different, comforts and different portfolios in his administration, in his army. That's why he was very critical of Kalhana. Now, according to the analysis of M.S. Sitan, these people who were employed by Harsha must have been the reminders behind of the second unfruitful attempt of Mahmud of Ghazni in 1016 to enter Kashmir. So we see that there were not only mystic contacts between Muslim mainland and Kashmir, but there were also cultural contacts as well. And when we see in the 14th century, the Sufis pouring into Kashmir in thousands, these Sufis were now influenced largely by the Wahdatul Wujud concept of Ibn al-Arabi. And again, this must have something to share with the Trika or Pratyabhijna recognition of Shaivism, which attempts to assist the seeker to recognize that his essential, that is the seeker's essential nature, is non-different from that of the Paramashiva or the Absolute. So this has some resemblance with the famous uttering of Bayezid Bistami's Subhani Ma'azam Shani and Mansur al-Hallaj's An al-Haq utterance and Ibn al-Farid's Anahiyya utterance. So again, it does not mean that monism of Sufis and the monism of Shivites was something common. It was just a common idea. And again, I want to emphasize that there were not only mystic contacts between Muslim mainland and Kashmir, there were cultural contacts as well. And it was here that Sheikh Nuruddin took up into his hands the threads of these cultural and mystic contacts of local and non-local origins. He wanted and tried to give a synthetic and soothing touch to these local and non-local traditions, because on the one hand, Sheikh Nuruddin gives the local rishis, especially Laldad, the states of the Avtarhood, and on the other hand, he recognizes Mir Sayyid Muhammad Hamadani as the peer or the preceptor of Kashmiris. That is why in the beginning of his tenure or his life, he retires to his cave in spite of the dissuasions of his family, especially his mother. And but very soon, when he sees that the reality was unfolding in a different version as well, he cancels his retirement and tries to live a life with his family, with the society. That is why he says to his one of his close disciples, Baba Nasr, that Nasr Bab Jungle Khasun Gayam Khami, that is, Baba Nasr, I erred by resorting to the jungles. And the saying is like this, that 5 times praying daily and living with the society, living with the family, these are the traits of a good person or a good Muslim. So it is in this vein, in this direction that Sheikh Nuruddin gives a description of Maulana Rumi to counter the charlatans of his time. That's why he says, Malayasi Maulai Rumi, that is, if you want to talk about a mullah, then mention the name of Maulana Rumi. So it is not a strange phenomena that the sayings and poetry of Sheikh Nuruddin was then hailed as the kosher Quran or the Quran in Kashmiri, much like the Masnavi of Rumi, which was hailed as the Hast Quran dar Zabani Pahlavi. So again, we see he is hailing Mansur al-Hallaj, the martyr mystique of the Sufis or Muslims, and he says, who has separated me from Mansur, he and I, that is Sheikh Nuruddin, pursued the same goal. It means the estimation given to Mansur al-Hallaj as a martyr mystique by the Muslim scholars, especially the Sufi scholars, was given by Sheikh Nuruddin as well, and he understood this. But at the same time, he did not forget the rishis of the local bygone times, such as Zalka Rishi, Rum Rishi, Miran Rishi, Pilas Rishi, and the like. So to conclude this paper, we can say that much like Al-Ghazali, who after the culmination of his mystical experience had declared the Prophet ﷺ as the fountainhead of all guidance, the Sheikh, that is Sheikh Nuruddin, in accordance with his sincerity, selflessness, purity of intent, wit, intelligence, inquisitiveness, and inclusiveness, especially, sums up his whole experience in his proverbial saying, which gives the much needed transcultural hue to his mystical standing. And I quote, the first Rishi was Ahmad, that is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The second Rishi